Good Saturday morning, everybody. I hope everybody is having an awesome day. We need to pray for Atlanta. It's horrible. It's miserable. It is the worst thing ever for the average person, but I'm fine. We have hit record breaking pollen counts. Now, for the record, anything over 250 is usually considered extremely high. Now, 250, remember that. Our pollen count is 14,801. That's a big number. For years, I had been cheering on the pollen count when we would get to seven, 8,000. I think we even hit 9,900 something at one point a number of years ago. I'm like, we were so close to five digits, and we are well above five digits now. we're Yeah, it's ridiculous. I walked out this morning and just covered head to toe with it. I'm trying to brush it off. It's bad. So if you are in the Atlanta area, make sure you have your allergy medicines because it's a little ridiculous out there. The trick that I had learned is if you have to go outside, go outside. When you come in, change your clothes because the pollen is going to be all over you. And especially if you're allergic to the pollen, if you change your clothes, basically you walk in, strip if you can, as close to the door as you can so you're not tracking the stuff throughout the house. So, yeah, I've been having fun here. So, who do we have today that is playing hooky from Steven's pop-up soda? We have Jen who says good morning super early. We have Charlotte. Good morning, Katie Crafts and Giovanna. We also have Mary and Judy. So we got a pretty good crew here. If you're doing double dipping with Steven Soday, just make sure you're muted so that he can't hear you talking or hear me talking through there. Judy says she has her meds ready. Her dogs are bringing it in. Yeah, it's a little intense. Like I said, I was only out for a minute. I had friends showing pictures yesterday of their cars just covered from a couple hours. I texted my neighbors this morning. I was like, "Your cars are green for some reason," and that was before I even looked at the pollen count. And yeah, I she's like, "Yeah, I wish I had a garage." Oh wait, because they've got some stuff in their garage. Good morning, Ingrid. Out running errands. Hopefully, they're fun errands. So I am going to be back to work on the Star Cakes quilt, which is it's gonna be a graduation quilt for my cousin's son who is graduating high school. High school graduations get a much simpler quilt. And I cut the sashing strips yesterday night. So I have them here. And I found out I didn't buy enough fabric. And it's only because I did not adjust everything to the um the slight modification that I made. The way the Star Cakes pattern is written, it's expecting the same fabric to be your sashing as is going to be your border. And I'm doing a different color sashing for my border, from my border. So uh, this is grunge pear. So I'm going to do that for my sashing. And I got the grunge navy for my border, but I need an inner border of the grunge pear to make it look normal. So I'm waiting for that fabric. But I can at least get the center of the quilt done, which means I'll only have 8 more pieces to put on when that's ready or when the fabric comes in. So Giovanna says she's lucky she's not allergic. I'm not allergic either, but there gets to be a point where there's just so much that it's like sticking to your eyes. I have contacts in, so it's sticking to my contacts. It's just gross. Good morning, Donnell. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I saw you were doing some FPP stuff this morning. Judy wasn't allergic until she came to Georgia. I've heard a lot of folks say that they weren't allergic until they came to Georgia. And I moved to Georgia from the Boston area, but I grew up in South Carolina, so I think it's just because it's mostly pine down here, and a lot of like it's for some reason much worse pine here. I don't know. So let's see what we can get to start going. I laid out all my blocks on my bed last night, so I got them in the correct order. And I'm just going to put sashing on, and I'm going to try to do this web style, which means I've got all of the stuff from a single row or single column. So I'm going to put these together, and I'm also going to run the sashing row in between. Good morning, Candace. Is your car any greener today? I wish I could easily have gotten a picture of my neighbor's cars. So this piece that I just sewed on is the very top left corner. So I've got a block and then a sashing with a cornerstone. And then grab another block. And this cornerstone fabric is the same as my binding fabric, so I'm basically pulling the binding down into the quilt, even though this fabric is here as well, so it's around. Giovanna says, here in her town, we get pollen from pine trees, but not too bad as it usually rains when that happens. Oh, yeah, we're going to get rain tomorrow, which means the ground is going to be yellow, like the little yellow streaks that you see. Yeah, rivers of yellow pollen, like Candace said. Yeah, it'll be disgusting. There was, because air conditioners, there was a wet spot at QT this morning, and yeah, it was disgusting to see the pollen just pooling in that wet spot. Okay, so that's 2. We call it yellow snow. Yeah. Up in Massachusetts, in their pollen seasons, they have a weird. It's a fluffy thing, and I have pictures of it from some of my older visits. And it will pool up in like in door crevices and stuff at shops and stuff. And they call that spring snow. Number 3. Candace thinks Georgia's official tree is the pine. They are everywhere. Yes. I call pines weeds because they're everywhere. They don't need to be everywhere. We have much prettier trees that we could have, which are probably just as bad with pollen. Of course, it's if you believe the YouTubes, it's the government's fault that our pollen count is so high. I don't know how true any of this is, so take my words with a grain of salt, but I will just repeat what the YouTubes had said. Apparently, according to YouTube legend, when city planners were planning to have trees planted in the like in the city, they did not want fruit because, well, some of the YouTube legend says it's to prevent homeless people from having fruit. I don't know how much that would be, but you know, when fruit falls, it can get disgusting. It can start rotting, and if you're in a city and you're not actually harvesting the fruit, it can get really bad. So city planners said, we will plant male trees to prevent fruiting. So that's how basically pollen happen, because it's the male trees that generate the pollen, and there's no female trees in the area to absorb the pollen. I don't know how. I don't remember how pollen and that works, but yeah, the answer was doing only male trees in the cities so that you wouldn't get fruit. Now, what they should have done is planted only female trees, because if you don't have any male trees to, pollinate the plants, you're not going to get the fruits. But you would still get like everything that the bees need for their honey making process. Again, this is all YouTube lore, so I don't know how much of it is true, but that is the reason why they are claiming that our pollen counts get so high. Better on the ground than on the car, right? Yeah. We have a lot of catalpa tree? The bean tree. Ooh, I wonder if that's what my neighbors had. Uh, Growing up, we had neighbors, and anytime that she would get in trouble, she was told to get a beanpole for a switch. Which, as a southerner, if you've ever been told to fetch your own switch, that's a mind game. It's horrible. And yeah, it gets to be intense. But they had a beanpole tree or something like that, which had the things that she would end up getting when she had to get her paddling from a stick. I guess better to get paddled by nature than some like a belt or something. I'm just finger pressing my blocks, and I'm leaving them stitched together so they stay in order. And I'm just finger pressing just to get them opened up. It'll make it easier to press later. And once you get the first one, um, everything gets easier on your subsequent rows. And I'm always pressing towards the sashing. So on the rows with the blocks, they're being pressed towards the long sashing. On the rows with the cornerstones, they are being pressed to the row sashing. And then now that I got the rows together, I can put the next one on. Good morning, Barb. I hope you're having a great day. And I hope wherever you are, the pollen counts aren't too intense. Yesterday, our pollen count was like 6,000 something. And I was just, joking with people. I'm like, it's getting bad, it's getting bad. Which reminds me, I need to check in on a coworker friend because when he moved here from Miami for the job, he moved here just after pollen season, and I was joking with him that he's lucky he did it then because he would die. And when he hit pollen season the next year, it hit him really, really bad. To the point where he thought he was going to die. Barb says she is machine quilting, no pollen in there yet. That's good. And then with these long ones, I'm still putting a sashing on it. This is called web piecing because when you get everything together, you just have a giant web of strings holding everything together. It helps keep everything in the same order as long as you have a method of pulling things off of your design wall, your design bed, your design floor, to keep them in order to the machine, then you will not get anything out of order. And it doesn't really take that much more effort versus grabbing individual pieces and trying to bring things to and from your design area. Giovanna says, poor guy. Yeah. Like I said, I was half joking that he was going to die, but with the level of allergies that hit him, I think he was out for almost 2 weeks. Just because he couldn't get the allergy meds to give him enough control over the histamines. Yeah, Judy, today's pollen count is 14,801. The highest I have ever, I think it's the highest recorded ever here. At least according to Atlanta Allergies pollen count website. because I've gone back into history when I first started watching the pollen counts back in the day. And like I said, the highest I ever remember it seeing was 9,000 something. It might even been like 9,900 and something, or 9,800 and something. And I found out that like I'd gotten a couple comments on my vlog from a week and a half ago. And then I got a couple comments from my vlog this week that my voice was trailing in and out for some reason. I did some experiments and I found out that this camera was being set to my microphone. And I guess because it's a sideways camera or sideways facing camera, occasionally it would filter out a word for some unknown reason. So I figured out that that was the issue, and or have added, make sure that this camera is the one that has a microphone turned on. They're both the same camera model, so yeah, there's no way for me to know which one it is by visual in the settings. So I have to go in here and scratch the camera every day that I'm recording to make sure that the right camera is the one that is active with the microphone. But I did order a microphone because it was on sale. But I have no idea if it will work well with the sewing setup. So I may have to use still that camera for lives, but then I can use a better microphone for vlogs. We will see. It has to arrive here first. Good morning, Dubraka. And Mary says Houston weather forecasters have been referring to our pollen counts as beast levels. Yeah, I don't think that pollen needs to be at beast mode. There is a channel called It's a Southern Thing, and they have a hilarious, I think it's they put pollen as a horror movie. So it's very amusing to watch that the first time. Okay. I don't need to make sure this is as finger press, but I'm still doing the best I can because eventually it's all going to have to come together. And as long as you can keep the web untangled, it will be easier. Finger pressing is just, convincing the seams that's the direction that it really wants to go. Makes it easier to iron later. Press, whichever term you want to use. I use them interchangeably, even though I understand ironing includes pushing and pressing does not. Okay, another column of sashing. I am also wondering if Nightbot is working. Because a couple of weeks have gone by and some people are having issues with Nightbot, some people aren't. Sean, the guy who sews, said that he has fired Nightbot. And has gone to another bot of service for him. So I should know in the next few minutes if Nightbot is working. It's starting to seem lately it might be the morning streams that are having the problems. And like, if Nightbot can't get up early enough for us, that's a problem. And there's a reason why I'm using cornerstones. And it's just because I want less work. If you use cornerstones, it gives you a place every intersection around every block, and you can make sure things stay lined up. If you use the rows of sashing, like most patterns will say, that it gives you that you just do you sew a couple pieces together and just sew it as a row without the cornerstones. You then you have to make sure things line up from row to row, and that's a little bit more work than I want to do. Julie says maybe Nightbot needs some retraining and written warning in his files. I did ask Sean if he had put Night on a PIP with HR, but he's like, nope, just flat out fired him. If you don't show up for your job 2 days, then you obviously don't care. I'm like, okay. Which we're going to have some leadership in the office this week, and I'm not looking forward to that. because they like to have as many people in the office as possible, just so that they can um, be seen. And I'm like, can I just be sick or something? Not really be sick, but I don't care enough about some of our leadership because they they understand some of the stuff, but I feel like there's other stuff that they don't understand. And if their whole point is I want to be seen, then how much of a leadership is that? That's the whole reason why we had the return to office mandate, is because our CEO came on site to do a roadshow or something and nobody showed up to, clap for him. And then immediately he's like, okay, people are coming back in the office. And that said, I don't mind going into the office. It's just annoying on days that, it's 900 degrees in there. Or there's so many people in the office that when you have to take all your calls that you still have to take, it's too loud to take those calls. And you can't hear the people on Zoom. Okay, almost there with this. And I haven't seen Nightbot. And he's supposed to show up every half hour. So I may have to figure out a Nightbot solution as well. Oh, Nightbot! Which I guess means people can spam exclamation points and emojis right now. Although I think I had most of that turned down anyway. Because everybody likes their emojis, and I don't mind people doing their emojis. As long as they aren't inappropriate emojis. Teams are staying. Wait, that's right. I almost freaked out thinking I was missing sashing strips, but I'm not. One second. Because for some reason. Why are you not working?
I'm done.
So I have to get rid of a message in here because we don't do that type of advertising. Sorry, Christy. It's polite to ask before advertising a channel, not just advertising. Julie says she left office jobs to become a commercial driver, now drive a school bus and have autistic children screaming in her ear while she drives. Rather like the office dynamic. Yeah, my cousin has her CDL and drives school buses. She's also a home nurse, so she's like a multiple um she's multifaceted talented. And she she debates between whether she likes doing the home nursing thing or the school bus thing. It just really depends on the day. This. So last column of blocks. And then I can show you how I put the rows together. And then we're going to be jumping over to Steven's pop-up sew day. So again, I'm still doing what I have been doing for the last couple rows, is just getting bulkier and bulkier. You could also do this in sections. So if you're doing a larger quilt or it's got more blocks and you want to break it out, you could always break out your web piecing into sections, as long as you still put it back onto your design area in the right spots. It's just what you are comfortable pressing through your machine. Judy says those are pretty blocks. Thank you. The pattern is Star Cakes from Fat Quarter Shop. It's a free pattern, and the link to the pattern is in the description below. The fabric is Celestial Magic by Laurel Birch. I couldn't remember from a previous live what the line was, but I found it. Yeah, so it's a gorgeous fabric line, and I love this fabric here because it's got words like inspire, celebrate, energy, dream, love, create, brilliant, mystical love. So it is very positive, endorsing. But there's also one word on here that my aunt, the recipient's grandmother, is going to be very upset at, because it's got the word magic in it. Like all of these wonderful positive words, but all she's going to focus on is that it says magic. And then she's going to call me Satan spawn and all this other horrible stuff. And because she has me blocked on Facebook, I'm not going to see any of it, so I'm not going to care. I'm just going to giggle that I'm living rent free in her head. This same web piecing method is the way that I like to build my blocks as well. When I have things that are laid out on a design board, I just want to, if I'm able to, do it into the rows and columns and build it as one giant unit. I will tell you though, trying to find a fabric line that somebody that you have only communicated with a handful of times in his life is difficult. Like the last time I think I've actually communicated with him was 10 years ago, maybe. It's all family drama. It is what it is. But, you know, trying to ask folks, okay, what does he like? I even had to ask his mom. I was like, so what's he like? What's he not like? Do you think he'd like this fabric? Do you think he'd like that fabric? And when she finally said like his favorite colors are blue and green, I was like, well, that gives me something to go on. And I initially was going to try to make um, like something with just half square triangles of blue and green grunges, stuff like that. But then this fabric line just happened upon me, and I was like, this is perfect. And the last block. Duvraka says, wow, Russ, beautiful work, gorgeous fabric. Thank you. I can't take credit for designing the fabric, but I can take credit for picking it. Imagine if we had to design our own fabric too in quilting. That would be horrible. Okay. So everything, let me snip this one. Everything is now sewn together in rows, and all the rows are pieced together through strings, or not pieced, but they're stuck together through strings. And then what I do now is I figure out one end, which is going to be this one, and I grab the next one, the next row with it, and I put them right sides together. And then I just start sewing it this way. So line up edge. This first one is always the hardest one. But once you get it easy, you come down here and I'm going to snip the thread. You do not want to snip threads until you have something underneath your needle, because otherwise you make a mistake. You could accidentally tip something upside down, twist it. So I'm going to line up these two corners. I'm going to line up these two corners, which is where the sashing block is. It's the end of this block. And I'm going to use this to line up what I need to sew for this row. And just keeping things as well in line. And again, using this seam to make sure everything stays aligned. And because I have that cornerstone seam, I know exactly how much give and take I need to put in each row as I piece them together. And now I want to, like I said, this is where it gets complicated because you're pushing quilt in different directions. But once you get things moved where you want it, it stays lined up pretty easily. So I'm just lining up these last few stitches. And then when I get to that seam, I'm just shifting everything again. And I'm going to the next seam. Oops. This seam allowance is flipped wrong. But I'm not going to touch it. This one is flipped correctly. Get it to the intersection and then line up for the next one. And as long as you keep this seam allowance together and keep your fabric flat, it will essentially ease itself in if you have a couple thread difference between the two. Barb says, wow, I'm going to need to watch this a few more times and practice on a block, not an entire quilt. Blocks are where I started this from, because it is so much easier to manage on a block than a whole quilt. But this is keeping me from having to get up and down stairs, especially since I am on camera. But you can do the, like, you can start this with 9 patches to practice your web piecing. You can do it with then I guess 16 patches, or like just slightly bigger blocks. 9 patches are the easiest to start with. And then, like I said, just you can even try it with a couple blocks. And it is easier if you're not having to worry about the sashing strips. The sashing strips are really what's pushing this around a little bit more. But I have done this so many times, it's not really phasing me. But when I was working on my sister's graduation quilt, which had the blocks pieced together without sashing, and it had, the pattern had everything so that things, like every intersection nested, not just every block you can nest, every intersection was able to nest. So I had a lot of direction I was able to give my poor sewing machine to say, okay, I only need to line up every blocker or every seam or two instead of trying to line up this 16-inch block. So now we have, oh, I can clip this one too. We have the first section put together, and I'm going to put the next set of blocks on. So I'm staying on one side first, because this is going to be easier. And the reason why it's easier is because I'm doing a big piece with the big piece. So I am staying on this side, but then I'm going to do the opposite side after this. Like, I'm not going to go left to right all the way. I'm going to go these 2 columns on the left, then I'm going to do the 2 columns on the right, and then I'm going to work myself towards the center. And that's just so that I can keep the bulk of what's not sewn together managed. And again, I'm not really like, depending on how you're planning on pressing, you don't even necessarily need to trim these threads in between. If you're going to twist your threads, you need to trim your thread. But if you're just going to press to one side, you don't need to cut this thread that's in between your blocks. I just do it out of how I don't even know how I'm pressing these blocks yet. So this just keeps my pressing options open and lets me choose how I want to press it later. Line that seam up. And like I said, I do stops every time I hit an intersection. And that just lets me I'm just working on one piece at a time. It's not harder, it's just bulkier. And we're approaching the next seam, so I'm going to now cut these threads. Again, I've kept everything together in the same spots for the entire seam. So the machine has been doing the easing in on its own. Come on. If you're going over a hump, you need a little bit of leverage on the back side of your knee. I have a hump jumper somewhere, but I don't know where it is right now. Lining up the two seams. And again, making sure you press everything in opposite directions means you have that extra leverage of where the seam should go. And if I was doing the traditional single sashing row, I would not be doing like this to piece the rows together. I would be doing it the more traditional way where you line up your seams, and I would be pinning or clipping every couple inches just so that everything was properly lined up and eased together. And like that, I have half the quilt put together. Wait, let me move my camera view. So I've got 2 rows sewn together, and all I have to do is the 2 rows on the opposite side, which, like I said, this looks like a mess, but it's really not that bad. I just got to start sewing this side and then meet in the middle, and I will have the center of the quilt done. I have to wait on my inner border fabric because, like I said, I bought a little bit less than I needed. Like I said, I did the math. The math from the pattern is correct if you use a single fabric for your sashing and for your borders. But like I said, because I did something different, I did not have the full thing in my head what I wanted to do. So I mathed wrong when I decided to order my fabric. So additional grunge will be coming hopefully this week. It depends on how quickly the shop can get it packaged and how quickly the mail can get it to me. We will see. Ingrid says it looks great. Thank you, Ingrid. But I'm going to close off this live, and I'm going to be joining my friend Steven of the Idiot Quilter on his pop-up sew day. So for anybody who doesn't know, Steven is awesome, and I do not have the link directly. Let me see if I can pull up the link real quick. Because he does a pop-up sew day every so often, and he puts his links in his videos. So anybody who wants to join, there is the link to Steven's pop-up sew day. It is free. You just have to go in and say, hi, I want to sew with everybody, and you can sew with everybody. You don't even have to say, hi, I want to sew with everybody. We're a friendly group. It's not broadcast to YouTube. It's not broadcast anywhere. And it's a free thing that Steven does. I also occasionally will do a sew day. I call mine Sewing Shenanigans. Don't know when my next one is going to be. It's going to probably going to be in like 2 weeks. I haven't fully confirmed that yet. But you kind of heard it here first. So if you want to continue sewing with us, join us over on Steven's Sew Day. If you choose not to, make sure you give all the streamers on YouTube today lots of love, because I know there's people sewing all day. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Toodles!